not just OBGYNs should be talking about menopause because it affects all the organs of your body, right? But right now, that's who really ends up having the conversation with you. And many of them are like, they're all trying to do their best. And some of them are really trying to study up and learn, but they weren't taught it in medical school. It's literally like one of our doctors likes to joke that it was like she had 1 hour on menopause in medical school. And it wasn't even a lecture. It was a lunch and learn, like in the conference room with pizza. So it's just a big, big mountain that we all have to climb in terms of filling this expertise gap.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we have conversations about power, value, and success on your own terms. I'm talking with women who are building influence, wealth, and authority, not by following someone else's playbook, but by deciding what success looks like for themselves. These are candid conversations, hard-earned perspectives, and no BS insight from women who aren't asking permission. They're setting the standard. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice. Most people call me JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have Anne Fulenwider. She is the co-founder and co-CEO of Alloy Health, and we're going to hear all about it. Hi, Anne. How are you?
I'm great. So good to see you. It's been so long.
I know it's been far too long, even though we literally live a bridge apart from each other. And tunnel, if you want to go that way.
I know. Ever since, honestly, since COVID, I barely cross that bridge anymore. It's terrible. When I do, I'm very excited to be back in the city.
Well, it's also because you're extremely busy with your company that you started. How long has Alloy Health been around now?
I left my job as editor-in-chief of Marie Claire magazine, which is where I met you. I finished that at the end of 2019. So we sort of incorporated January 1, 2020. And then we opened for public, like opened for business, November 2021. So
that is crazy.
I know. It's really weird.
Wow. I mean, it's such a short period of time, really, to have such an amazing company. So if you don't know what it is, you're about to. So why don't you first start with what Alloy Health is?
Yeah. Alloy Health is a digital health company geared entirely towards helping women in midlife and menopause and perimenopause thrive. So we provide you with information and access to expert doctors, and we send you home the prescriptions and the evidence-based solutions that really work.
Amazing. And it is such a massive topic and something that is sadly was not at all studied in med school. And so you see like people like this coming up for women who are really struggling, you know? So what made you decide to do this and with your partner?
So there really were three things for me personally. I mean, the short story is that my business partner, Monica Molinar, went into surgical menopause overnight at 40 when she had her ovaries removed right here in New York City and was really left ill-prepared for what happened next, which is that she was like woke up in menopause, and it took her 5 years and 5 doctors to find the answers and the solutions that she needed and that we all need to thrive and feel our best during this time of life. My own story was really, as you know, I was working and covering a lot of entrepreneurs at Marie Claire magazine, and I was so inspired by that group of people who, for the most part, were a little bit younger than me and had come to a part of life that was not satisfactory to them. Like, this is not, the status quo here is not working. Decided to fix it by starting a company. And I just met so many amazing women that we covered at Marie Claire that I just got a bit of the entrepreneurial itch, if you will. And in the meantime, as we were doing that coverage, two things happened in my personal life. One is that my mom died suddenly of a heart attack. And that just sort of gives you that moment of like, aside from it being sad, and she was too young for that, but it was also like, wait, what am I doing in my life and what really matters? And so that was sort of a aha moment for me. But because she died of a heart attack and had heart issues her whole life. And then my daughter, who is fine now, but she was a young teenager at the time, and she was going through some of her own health issues. So I was really seeing women's healthcare from like sort of youngest to the oldest. And I really was thinking, this sucks. It's got to be better. And then lastly, a reporter at Marie Claire named Kayla Webley Adler did a story about, internally we called it Being a Woman is Killing You. And it was just about the fact that all of the lack of research on women's bodies was causing worse outcomes for women in health. And so I got really interested in that idea, really interested in healthcare. And after doing Marie Claire for, I think, 7 years as editor-in-chief, 9 years total, and doing great work there in many ways, but I really wanted to find a way to help women from the inside out.
Yeah, you were seeing it firsthand. You were writing about it. Your magazine was writing about it. And crazy title of an article, right? Being a woman is killing you. But at the same time, like, how did you make that jump? I mean, it can be intimidating for a lot of people going from like a cushy job, everything's paid for, everyone has seen Devil Wears Prada, everyone has seen like, how like you're taken care of and your lifestyle, etc. Not to mention the fact that everything's done for you, like from finance and, legal and etc. Like to make that, like talk about that transition, because I think that's huge and it prevents a lot of people from following their dreams, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like a little bit of naivete went a long way. I didn't realize that I would be doing I mean, I didn't think I was going to have a staff right away. I knew I'd heard the stories, right? But what I realized now is like, I only heard the success stories, right? Like we only covered by the time you're getting covered in Marie Claire magazine, you're a successful entrepreneur to some degree or another. And so I definitely wasn't 100% sure I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't realize that only 5% of businesses get to the stage that we're at. I didn't like a lot of it, probably if I'd done like really deep dive, may not have done it. Not knowing probably helped. Didn't know what didn't know. But also on the other side of things, I really, really was starting to feel like I wanted to do something that meant more to me than covering fashion, beauty, and celebrity. And we did a lot more than that at Marie Claire. I'm really proud of the work that we did. But one of the things that happened while my mom and my daughter were going through various health things, my daughter was suffering with the beginnings of an eating disorder. And she was showing me a picture on Instagram, which of course we didn't know. We shouldn't have given her access at all. None of us should have, but she got an Instagram account when she was way too young, middle school. And she showed me a picture of herself and she had like photoshopped it or whatever you do, like edited it, body tuned, whatever it is, face tuned to make herself look skinnier. And I was like, I didn't even, I was like, oh no, you can't do that. Don't do that. You have a beautiful body. Like, what are you doing that for? And she said to me, what do you mean, Mom? You guys do that at work all the time.
Oh
and
my
I was
God,
like,
yes.
oh my God. I'm really proud of so much we did at Marie Claire. I don't think the fashion and beauty industry is evil, but I do think some of it is not doing young girls any good, right? Like holding up these standards.
I had that same epiphany when I was like working with rappers and clearing songs called Money Cash Hoes. And I was like, I'll be paying for this later.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a real aha moment. And there were a lot of those, as we were talking about earlier, but I just was really like, I want to do something with the skills that I built in this career that makes a more positive impact on women and girls. And, menopause doesn't happen to girls, but periods do. And like the whole spectrum of that story of like, just doing what I can, choosing one part of it and trying to make it better. Just really at the end felt urgent to me. Like it wasn't it like may not have been the smartest financial move I've ever made, but it was definitely came from the heart. Like I couldn't do this. I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. And I really wanted to do this new thing, but so badly that I just stepped right in.
Yeah, look, using your craft and talents for purpose. I mean, it's amazing. And you are helping young girls because when they see that they're going to be taken care of when they're older, it makes them feel differently and feel better. Like, I still hear of like young girls or their moms being like, oh, she has like such horrible cramps. I'm like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
Right.
Your doctor is saying, oh, it's what it is. Change your doctor.
100%.
Similarly with menopause and women just going to their normal gynecologist and going, oh, okay, well, like, no, change your doctor if they think that they can give you this. Ask them how much they have really delved into this, how much time other than reading it online, because I can do that too.
Yeah. And we really like to say like the doctors are doing their best. Like so many of them, all of them, right, went into this field that I would never be able to. I mean, God knows, that's a really tough field. And they all went into it to help people. But it's really hard to be a doctor these days. The business of being a doctor is terrible. And the healthcare system is not working for doctors. It's not working for patients, but that's also because it's not working for doctors or for any level of healthcare provider. It's really tough. And we don't have enough OBGYNs in the country to even deliver the babies. And the number of OBGYNs is going down. And by the way, it's not just OBGYNs should be talking about menopause because it affects all the organs of your body, right? But right now, that's who really ends up having the conversation with you. And many of them are like, they're all trying to do their best. And some of them are really trying to study up and learn, but they weren't taught it in medical school. It's literally like one of our doctors likes to joke that it was like she had 1 hour on menopause in medical school. And it wasn't even a lecture. It was a lunch and learn, right? Like in the conference room with pizza. So it's just a big, big mountain that we all have to climb in terms of filling this expertise gap. And luckily with technology and AI and all the things, we can amplify that expertise. And that's really what Alloy is based in, is like, let's amplify the expertise to as many women as possible and try to knock down some of the barriers to getting great healthcare at this age.
As we know, the lack of education in medical school about menopause right, in general, and it's falling to these OB/GYNs, should it become its own practice? And also because it does affect the whole body, right? You end up going to all different doctors who aren't communicating to figure out what's really going on.
I think lots of people go to doctors or healthcare specialists for specific symptoms. Like I went to a therapist for years because of my anxiety and mood swings. In fact, that was part of menopause. I didn't realize that, or part of perimenopause. People go to rheumatologists. There's so many symptoms that you might end up at a dentist when your teeth are being affected by dry mouth, which is part of perimenopause, menopause. So, it should ideally infuse all specialties. Like everyone who touches women in their 40s and 50s as a medical professional should have some knowledge of menopause. That's going to take a while to happen. And in the meantime, are there doctors that are like setting up practices for menopause? Absolutely. And thank God. But even if, like, for example, 50% of the counties of the United States do not have enough OB/GYNs to deliver babies. And that's actually a pretty old stat. So it's probably less than now, right? So the number of OB/GYNs in general in the country is declining. Even if every single one of them gave up their practice delivering babies and just dedicated themselves to menopause, that is still not enough medical expertise or professionals to meet the demand of depending on who you ask, between 65 and 85 million women in the United States who are entering perimenopause and menopause right now.
All right, so let's talk about your journey with Alloy Health and your partner. So how did you meet her?
Monica Molinar and I met really walking our dogs in a small town on the North Fork of Long Island called Orient. We were walking our dogs. We both had like little puppies. We were walking them early in the morning. We were both like on 2-week vacations out there. And she was like, my husband says we look just really similar and we should be friends. And I was like, okay, well, that was like a great pickup line. And we basically ended up just starting walking our dogs every morning, our little puppies. And at that point, like my mom had just died. She was leaving a business that she had started. You just start talking about everything. And we both had teenagers. And like every morning we would just start talking about stuff. And it soon came to her struggle with menopause and all the things that I was going through at the time, grieving my mom and thinking about what I want to do with my life. And we just kind of hit it off. And then that was it. We both went back to our lives in the city. And a couple months later, she called and was like, hey, let's meet up for coffee. I have an idea. And it was really her idea that she was like, let's go fix menopause. I was like, okay. It took me a minute. I was still under contract at Marie Claire, which was a great job, as we were talking about. It's hard to leave that, but it was also like really great timing. And I think maybe like 3 months after that, I just happened to have lunch with a guy who said that he wanted to fund life stage businesses. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. You know what a life stage is? That some people, that is getting ignored right now. This is 2018. So really no one was talking about menopause. And I was like, menopause. And he goes, I've been looking to fund a menopause company. And I was like, really? He was 29 years old, single dude. And he was like really interested in menopause. So that was super forward thinking of him. And I was like, you should meet my friend Monica. And then the three of us met up and we talked for like the next 18 months. I mean, it was a long time. We had a lot to talk about. We had a lot to figure out. But it was really organic. I have to say, like that particular piece, we really lucked out in that we found someone who wanted to fund us like before we even really had a business idea. That never happened again. But it was a really great, they've been supportive all the way through. And that's been wonderful. We've had like great relationships with our investors, but that was really a piece of serendipity, if you believe in that. That's sort of where we started. Then we kind of looked at each other, we're like, oh my God, this guy wants to fund a menopause company. Are we going to start a menopause company? And the answer was kind of that we sort of jumped into it. And for the next year, we were talking about what we could do, what it could be. And then 2019, December, I announced I was leaving Marie Claire. And then January 1st, we started meeting in that investor's office. 2.5 months later, it was COVID. Yeah. So the whole world turned upside down. And I think when I left Marie Claire, I did not know that we were going to be doing a telehealth and pharmacy company. That seemed like a much bigger deal. Like it just became more and more obvious the more research we did that women were really, if you weren't talking to women about estrogen at this point in their lives, they're really, you're really doing them a disservice. We were like, oh my God, I think like to solve the menopause problem, we actually have to like build a telehealth company. And that was like much, much bigger project than what I thought I was doing when I left Marie Claire, but it was actually like the right thing to do.
And why is it that it was such a much bigger thing? Because it's telehealth for people who are not really understand.
So, right. So we were like, okay, we got to get women estrogen. We got to get the information about estrogen out there. There was this study it's now pretty common knowledge, but 23 years ago, there was a press conference about a study that like was really misleading and made everyone really afraid of estrogen, even though it had been out and about and prescribed and FDA approved for decades. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do that. I'm an information person. I can tell that story. I can talk to my friends in the press. We can get like that story out there. And that was a big part of the project. But in terms of like telehealth at the time was just barely starting. It was like Hims and Hers was out there, but it was the wide adoption of telehealth, of Zoom, of doing a podcast like this even that was really thanks to COVID. And so the idea that we could even stand something up that people would want to use and be familiar with, that was telehealth, was pretty new at the time. And then, by the way, when you want to do that, like that's already sort of a big undertaking. But then when you do that, there's like it's a very regulated industry. Right? It's not like magazines. Like we have to like go through lawyers. We had to be legal in every single state. We had to find doctors who could prescribe in every state. We had to figure out how they do it. What does our legal compliance look like on our tech back end? And then also we wanted to connect to a pharmacy. And so connecting to a pharmacy and then having that pharmacy be able to send prescriptions out across the country and dealing with, the workings of a pharmacy, the inventory, the shortages. It's just a much, much bigger enterprise that I thought when I left, I was doing content and nutrition.
And your business partner is not a doctor either, right?
No, she's a patient.
No.
We call her patient zero. She was patient zero, but she had started a business before. She was an entrepreneur. She had been to business school. This company she started before was Seed and Mill. It was a great tahini food company that had a shop in Chelsea Market. So she had some entrepreneurship under her belt. And that company still exists. And I have some right in my fridge, delicious sesame tahini. But so I think we're a good combination in that like, she's a little bit more of the crazy idea person. And I'm a little bit more like well, how do we actually do that? Maybe a little bit more of a cynic, but also like, well, what's that really going to take? And so I think we complement each other in a lot of ways that we honestly like, that's also lucky. We didn't know each other that well. We were like, let's start a business together. So it's like starting a telehealth business that is trustworthy. And we also had to convince doctors this was a good idea. We heard Sharon Malone on a podcast, Michelle Obama, and we sort of tracked her down to convince her that we were like solid people that want to do something good for people. That was a whole endeavor. Building the tech that supports the connectivity between doctor, patient, Alloy website, and pharmacy is all very complicated. We had no idea what we were doing. We actually spent quite a long time with like various different people who weren't the right people to help us build that. That was a big lesson. So it just was like, if you'd asked me October 2019, when I was thinking about leaving Mary Claire, like, are you going to go build a telehealth company? I would be like, hell no. Why would I ever do that? I'm not qualified to do that.
And raise money, right? You have like those things aren't cheap. So you have to raise money.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you had your initial investor, right? But you've had to do rounds since then. I can only imagine, right?
Yeah. I mean, I will say like when we were covering entrepreneurs at Mary Claire, we heard a lot of stories about how hard it was to raise money. And on the one hand, we've had a couple of really serendipitous connections and moments. On the other hand, I probably have had like 350 conversations with various investors over the last 5 years, maybe more, like telling them the story. And it's just, you get such a range of reactions. I mean, at the very beginning, you also just got like, menopause, isn't that kind of niche? We're like,
for old ladies, no one cares about.
Exactly. I think my mother, or my grandmother, people just, and it was like men and women across the board. People are always like, oh, the male investors are so terrible about women's health. And like, probably, maybe some of them are, but we had a great male investor to start off. We have had a lot of other great male investors. Most of the other investors we've had. So we're through Series A. So we did 2 different seed rounds, if you count that first one. And then we did a Series A. And a lot of our earlier investors were angel investors, friends of ours, business school classmates of my co-founders, a couple of family offices. And then when we did the Series A, we got a few other smaller institutional, like Emmeline came in and Amboy Street, who've been really great. And Pace Healthcare out of Chicago was one of our earliest investors. That came through a connection from the Power Trip, actually. I think the investor conversation is like, yes, it's hard, but the people are really smart. I've met a lot of really interesting people. And I think the sort of story out there, like, oh, it's so hard and no women get investment, like that's true, but it's just more nuanced than that. I think it's like,
yeah. First of all, Colleen Foster, love her from Amboy.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's been amazing.
She's a friend. But it's more like you got to take it like everything is information, right? Take in the information. If they don't like it, then understand why they don't, make sure that like you're getting the information at each time, right? Of course it's going to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. You know what I mean? We'd all be billionaires, but it's hard. And yes, it is harder for women, but you guys were early adopters in this, and that alone and the amount of knowledge that you have because of it is just, I'm sure outpaces anything of like the hard conversations and getting the money.
Yeah. I mean, I've had to like unlearn and learn so many things, right? Like one of the things I really had to unlearn from the world of magazines was like the nature of competition. And like the fact, like in magazines, we're all like scrambling for like the one celebrity on the cover or the one dress from a certain designer or the one advertiser. And like the more people who were after it, the worse, right? Like it's sort of like the stakes were all about getting first and being only and being exclusive. What I've learned in business is if there are other people out there doing what you're doing, it's actually a really good sign. It means you're doing something that is needed and that there's a market for it. And so I had to really unlearn that. And then of course I had to like learn as if I've gone to like medical school, law school, business school, all while just operating a business, building the plane while we're flying it. But I've definitely been feeling the new synapses being fired in my brain. It's been a phenomenal brain exercise.
I love it. All right. So tell us more about Alloy Health. What are your projects? What I keep seeing online is apparently I need eye cream, but like this eye cream and the face cream, I mean, obviously the telehealth and all those things. So tell us about your innovative products.
The first innovative thing that we did was just think about technology and AI now in terms of how we can amplify expertise and connect every single woman who needs to a physician who knows exactly what they like, has decades of experience in what they're doing. And then creating a relationship with that between that doctor and patient. So that is like something that doesn't exist in the real world, right? You go to your doctor's office now, you wait 6 months for the appointment, you wait another 45 minutes for the doctor to come in, you have maybe 15 minutes if you're lucky. Then you leave. And if you have any questions, you're going to follow up with like various different people in the office, but you're never going to talk to that doctor again. So I think the first innovation, and I will get to the eye cream, I promise, but the first innovation was really using technology to amplify expertise and get it into the hands of the women who need it most, or some of the women who need it most. There's so many other needs in healthcare, but
because it's individualized, right? All of our symptoms are so different. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it affects every single organ system in your body, and not any single woman has the exact same mix of symptoms. That's the one piece of innovation. Then the other sort of like, if you will, like a kind of revolutionary thing that we did, it's now more common, was to say like estrogen is safe. And not only is estrogen safe, but it's actually the thing that is missing in menopause. And when you give a little bit back into your body, all of the symptoms get better. And that was actually like one of our biggest hurdles. People were like, oh, that's going to be so hard to educate the market. And people are scared of estrogen. And they were. But they were also suffering. And there were some experts out there who knew that estrogen was not dangerous. And that's a whole other rabbit hole, it'd be a whole other podcast to go down that. But there's a great book by Avram Blooming called Estrogen Matters. And I saw him speak actually in January 2020 and heard his whole story about like how estrogen sort of like been maligned. Like estrogen had like a really bad PR moment in 2002. And because of that, no one was prescribing it anymore. No one was teaching about menopause. Like this whole sort of vacuum was born. And that was why this particular generation had been suffering, the one above us. So the sort of revolutionary, innovative thing that we did was just talk about how safe estrogen was and get doctors and experts to talk about how safe estrogen was. And that was a bit of an uphill climb at the beginning, honestly. Like educating a market is something that every investor will tell you, like, you don't want to have to educate the market. But the fact is, when women who were like looking for, on average, our first customers have been looking for help for 3 to 5 years. And when they're clamoring for that information and they're suffering so badly, like there's nothing they wanted more than that education. Still to this day, our education materials, even on our website or on our YouTube channel or podcasts that we do, or, like webinars, et cetera, that education piece, women are so hungry for it. And when they get it, like when you give women the information, accurate information that they need to get the healthcare that they deserve, it is like magic. They need it. Like no one's talking to us about this. And even like the medical profession, and again, like we love doctors, they're doing a really good job. And they're doing the best they can. But it has somehow come up through the ages that like, there's a story about how like men go and ask for Viagra, right? And the doctor gives them all the risks and the benefits right there. Here are all the risks. But if you want it, I'll prescribe for you. And the most men are like, okay, yep, that's fine. I hear all the risks and I still want it. With women, when you go in, it used to be anyway, it's changing. But like, I'm having all these symptoms. And the doctor, if they knew about estrogen, would just say like, no, you can't have it. There was no conversation of like, here are the risks and benefits. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, woman who's suffering, that you actually can take that information, process it yourself, and make a decision that we are jointly like deciding together. And that just is the paternalistic way that women are treated in medicine. It goes back a long time.
Yeah. And a lot of it was like, but that's just what it is, from periods through menopause. Like, sorry, that's just what it is being a woman. Like,
so much of it. Yeah.
So much. Yeah.
So I guess when you talk about like, what's the innovative thing that we did, we became the estrogen experts. There are others, but there weren't that many. So we became the estrogen experts. We love estrogen. We think most women, we know it's not our think or belief. It's not Santa Claus. Like we know the evidence is there. The experts agree, like for the vast majority of healthy women, estrogen is by far the best first line treatment, especially when taken within 10 years of menopause. But like talking about that and making it normal was a big, we talked to journalists, we talked to the Today Show, we talked to Oprah, we talked to the New York Times. Like we really got that story out there. And in doing that and discovering how great estrogen was, We also came across the fact that when you put vaginal estrogen in your vagina for menopausal symptoms, which is like dryness, all those things, it builds the collagen and the elastin and moistens and really plumps and firms and strengthens the skin of the vagina. And so my business partner, when she had to use it, when she was, long story, but she got the wrong prescription for something for the very first time in her life, she had those symptoms and used vaginal estrogen and it worked like right away. And she was like, wow, if it does that to my skin down there, what would it do to the skin on my face? And guess what? It does the same things. It builds elastin and collagen and plumps and firms and moistens and strengthens the skin. And we know that because we're about to publish another about like 3 clinical studies of our own to prove that both the efficacy and the safety of topical estrogen. And so, yes, it works in the vagina, but it works really well in the skin. And so we've come out with now we have 3 products: a face cream, it's called M4, estriol-based skincare. We have a serum that has estrogen, a few peptides in it, and then the eye cream, which just came out last July. And you've probably been seeing that a lot of people are talking about it. It's really become a thing.
So why can't you just put estradiol cream on your face? Why does it have to be in another formulation?
You can use you can use your vaginal estrogen on your face. You can use your vagina however you want. But
you're going to have a job where you use the word vagina all the time.
I know, it's hilarious. My 17-year-old son was like, Mom, can you stop? But he's really well educated on this. But so you can use your vaginal estrogen on your face for sure. And a lot of people do, and that's great. If you feel it, a lot of us like to put something a little bit nicer, shall I say. Like it's just, and plenty of people are enjoying putting their vaginal estrogen cream on their face, and that's awesome. We just made something that is formulated for the face. It has quite a different texture and other ingredients. We took some ingredients out. In Europe, where my business partner lives, her vaginal estrogen came in the form of estriol, which is a different type of estrogen than estradiol. And estriol is the pregnancy hormone. Like that's when your body is flooded with estriol, is when you're pregnant. It's a slightly different form of estrogen. And so we did studies on estriol and estradiol and decided to go with estriol for various reasons. But you can put any kind of estrogen on your face. We sell prescription strength estriol, and in the face and the face cream and the face serum, it's a little bit stronger for the eye cream because you're putting it on a smaller area of your body.
Amazing. And all of these learnings, et cetera, and you becoming a doctor yourself, basically. What's the biggest misconception about menopause, perimenopause? You think people have gotten wrong?
I mean, there's the one that like is being changed now, but like that estrogen is harmful, right? That's something your body makes. It makes your whole life. Since you got your period, your body's making a lot of estrogen. It's not carcinogenic. So that's one. But the other one I think is that it happens to old ladies. Like perimenopause can happen, like menopause, the average age of menopause is 51. A lot of people get it earlier than that. And when I say get it, I mean enter it. It's not a disease either, right? It's a state. But so perimenopause can be the 10 years leading up to that. So that's 41. And if you're someone who's going to go into menopause when you're 45, perimenopause can start at 35. And I certainly think like perimenopausal symptoms were hugely to play in my sort of like somewhat of a midlife crisis in my late 40s, right? The 40s are really tough for us for a lot of reasons. Many of us are like raising teenagers. You might be like in the height and the most stressful part of your career. Your parents are aging. There's so much going on in your life at that point. You just never think, oh, it's probably my hormones, or you never used to. And hopefully now people do. So I think the biggest misconception that we've had, and by the way, like every agency we've ever gone to, or like so many people who've designed artwork for us for Alloy, they're like, okay, here's a group of menopausal women. And they all are like grandmas. Like
the like, golden girls.
Exactly. And we're like, hi, we're not 25, but we don't look like we're 85. And by the way, 85-year-old women are also in menopause, because once you go into menopause, you're in it for the rest of your life. But the idea that it's for old ladies is, I think, misleading and kind of harmful, because then those women who are like 43 and thinking that their mood swings or their lack of sleep or their weight gain or all the other, like all the things, anxiety, are happening for other reasons, it would just be so helpful for them to take perimenopause into consideration as one of the things that might be causing that.
Exactly. Because again, like you were saying, it happens to every organ. My perimenopause is like frozen shoulders and plantar fasciitis, which I don't know many people who have that, but I've never had a hot flash in my life. So it's just so like that lack of education. And then again, that perception, it's like, oh, you're old. And it's like, let's be real. No one wants their period. Okay. Let's be real. Right.
Exactly.
Like,
yes. Thank God.
A good thing. This is a good thing. That's a good thing. But yes, it's like this misconception. And here you have all these amazing women that that are in their 50s. And like, of course, it's like, So yeah, I get it. And like, thank you so much for doing this and like shouting it from the rooftops and having this company, because it is so important and the education is so important. And I know that my girlfriends and I spend so much time talking about it and giving each other tips and tricks. And we're like, if we're sitting here in New York City and we aren't being fed the proper information about perimenopause and menopause, like what is going on in the middle of the country? You know what I mean? So it's great that you have telehealth, because how else are people going to, get the help that they need? So kudos to you, Anne. I love it.
Thank you.
As an aside, Anne and I met on the very first power trip that Marie Claire is doing. And it was this like amazing plane that left from JFK in a JetBlue plane, flown by all female like pilots. And I met everybody from Amy Emmerich to Audrey Gelman to Alyssa Mastromonaco, Leah Goldman, all these people who are still my friends, and got to watch, Gwyneth Paltrow talk and sat next to Dominic Crenn and, had all these amazing experiences. And I still have the suitcase from there. My son uses it.
Mine too. That was an amazing, amazing experience to bring all those women together. It was
Yeah, it was incredible. But that is going to the point of putting women in a room together and sharing their stories. Nothing ever bad comes from it, and only great things can come. So having this, long and storied and very exciting career, like, what do you think was in you? What was like the one ask you think that really changed your trajectory?
It's such a good question. And I think there are so many, right? For this particular pivot, which has been like the most meaningful change of my life, probably. I mean, there are a few others like getting married and having kids, but that ask was like me having, frankly, the moment of grace, actually, like was sad. Obviously, it's a tragedy. My mom died too young, but it was in some ways a gift. And then it gave me this like moment to sort of hover above my life and be like, wait, what am I doing? What do I want to do? And so that's probably one of them. I mean, another one was like when I was my very first job in New York, I worked for George Plimpton, who is this like legendary literary guy in New York, but we were working out of his apartment on the Upper East Side. This is not the Depression era, okay? Like this is not like one of those when your grandma says, I remember when milk cost 10 cents, but I was living in New York City in my grandmother's back room, and I was getting paid $16,000 a year to be an assistant in 1995. And I had been there for a year, and George was like, okay, time to give you a raise. How about $17,000 a year? And I was like, how about 20?
Oh my God.
And that was actually a really huge moment for me to be like, I don't know where I came from. Like there was not a lot of talk back then about like, in my circles anyway, about like what women were making, blah, blah, blah. And it still wasn't that much money. $20,000 a year in 1995 was still very little money.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I think asking and getting it was actually kind of a huge moment too. And I know you talk a lot about that. And it just came to me when you were like, what's the biggest ask? I mean, that was probably one of the biggest ASK asks, right? Like the big moment of pivoting in my career was different, but like those little decisions along the way are little moments of courage.
You can't be where you are without making a lot of brave asks in general. But it's like those key kind of moments where you're like proud of yourself and like know that kind of set you on a different trajectory. It's exactly the kind of stuff we love. No, this is awesome. I'm so grateful for you to be on there and take the time, but we can't let you leave without asking our one question that we always ask all the ladies, because they never have a problem thinking of this. And that is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh my God. I mean, so much, right? Like pretty much everyone from like the outside advisory world when we were trying to build this company had some piece of advice that had we taken it, we'd be out of business now. Whether it was like, you should spend all of your first raise on building a telehealth network and not like go. And there were a lot of different ways of doing it. You don't have to build everything yourself. Like, that would have put us out of business. But I think that the number one moment anyway, we were talking to one of the best telehealth lawyers in the country, and we were trying to tell him what we wanted to do. And he literally was like yelling at us. And I'll never forget, he's like looking up at us. Those early days of COVID, when people didn't have their computers set up. He's like looking way up at us and he goes, this has never been done before. You can't do this. It's never been done before. And we were like, we know. That's why we want to do it. That's literally the exact reason why it needs to be done. And we have this idea. And it was just such a weird moment of being like, wow, that's not good advice.
Yeah. Good news. You didn't take it. And I'm sure there are thousands and tens of thousands, I'm sure to be millions of women that are going to thank you for it, for sure. Do you have any news, or what's the growth plan for Alloy Health? How can people find you and get involved?
We're on the interwebs. myalloy.com is the website, and myalloy is the Instagram handle. And we chose the word alloy because it's a fusion of elements for strength and protection against corrosion. But the website alloy.com was taken, so it's myalloy.com. And we have support groups. You can come on our website and just watch YouTube videos, tons of education out there. But if you come to Alloy, put in your health information and tell us your symptoms, we'll connect you right away with a doctor who is licensed in your state. You guys come up with a treatment plan, and you can have access to that doctor within 6 hours, and you can have the treatment plan and the prescriptions at your door in 3 days. And then once you're with us, you have access to that doctor. You can go message her whenever you want. And it's mostly women. We do have one guy. So, if you have any questions or thoughts, you can just come in and put your questions in there, and we'll answer them by text and get you connected with a doctor right away.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on today. And to everyone listening, thank you. I'm Jennifer Justice.
Thanks so much.
Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Taking Care of Lady Business podcast. When you travel for work or internationally, the real question isn't if something could happen, it's whether you've planned for it. That's why I'm a member of MedJet and have been for years. If your security is threatened or you're hospitalized while traveling, MedJet can get you home and to the hospital you choose, not just the closest one. It's not travel insurance. It's about not leaving critical decisions to chance. If you travel regularly, it's worth having in place. You can learn more at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. If this was useful, subscribe and share with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes for more on my guest and me, Jennifer Justice. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC. See you next time.